Now, what Babyface trying to do up in there? Now. Hey guys, welcome to Burgundy Blue Commentary. We talk about what we want to talk about when we're ready to talk about it. And I wasn't supposed to start this show until 4:05. I figured that Luther would give me that time. What a beautiful voice, though. We're going to talk about Father's Day today. And hey, Scott, we're talking about Father's Day, and it's not a sad or any kind of occasion like that. We're talking about the other day, and I'm going to have Gardis Watts on. The other day, we were sitting here talking about listening. I was listening. I love to listen. And I heard so many people like, man, this year I don't have my dad. I lost my dad 2 years ago. Me and my child's father is not getting along. And then I would hear from the brothers, me and the baby mama not getting along. And I would hear other stories. I never had a father. And I thought that maybe we could come together, and I did put the link in the chat for us to talk about. And we have an expert, Gardis Watts. I'm saying an expert just because he's so educational, and he probably gonna get me if I say this. I feel like he's down with the hood. He's down with the get down. You know what I mean? So he can relate to us. So I want to bring up, and then he's professional. So he's the best of both worlds. And I just want to bring him up to maybe talk about, help us understand or reflect on fatherhood. And you guys are welcome to join. If you guys want to give a testimony, I did reach out to Mama Hill because Mama Hill and I had a long discussion about her dad, and it was amazing. So I'm gonna bring up Gardis Watts. Hey, Gardis,
Hey Berg, what's going on?
how are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm above the ground, so that's a great thing.
Yeah, why is that a saying? Why is
You
that
know
saying?
what? You
Yeah.
know what? As you get older in life and you start to see more and more people just pass away, it's like, you never know. Some of death, doesn't discriminate by age, by race, by ethnicity. It's like
Mm.
anybody could be taken out, and and that's the whole thing about life because everybody's gonna die. We just don't know when. So
Um, and you're right because I always wonder because my mom used to say, "Well, I have more years. I might have it wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys. I have more years behind me than in front of me." She used to always say that,
hmm
and we'll be like, "Mom, you're not gonna pass away," and she'd be like, "I got more years behind me than in front of me," and I
yeah,
never thought about it that way.
I feel like I'm in that stage of my life
Me
right
too. Me too. I'm
now.
right there. So yeah. Um, I appreciate you for um, suggesting and doing this chat about. I'll let you explain it. I said it was called Fatherhood Reflection, a reflection on fatherhood, and I thought anyone could join. Memories of their dad, things they missed out if they didn't have a dad, um, reflection on multiple dads, even
Mhm.
if you're a baby daddy, things that happened to you this Father's Day, just things that you might want to talk about. So I'll let you kick it off.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, Berg. Let me start with you.
Uh-huh.
What is some of your memory or more notable things about your dad?
Oh my God. I was the boy for my dad. He had three girls, but I was a boy.
Mhm.
And that meant that if it was something, I followed behind my dad. He is an amazing carpenter. He know how to fix anything. If something's wrong, my dad knows how to fix it.
Mhm.
And I remember him telling me, you should always have your own toolbox and your own drill. And I'm like, Daddy, what I need a drill for and a toolbox? Later in life, I learned. Um, my dad was someone, he is, I'm saying was, but my dad, I'm saying was in past tense just because I'm grown now and I think I am, but I'm really not, I guess. None of us are. um, he really, I would say I can't do something. and he would say, we would get in trouble for using a word we can't.
Mm.
Can you imagine? I'll say, Daddy, I can't do this. He'll say, Yes, you can. Don't ever let me hear you say can't.
Hmm.
So, um, my dad, he always had multiple. He always had a stable job, but because he was so good with his hands, he had multiple jobs. He's now retired, but he still people still call him. And just, I think my dad taught me independence because even when I was defiant with him, I could stand on my own. Get my
Mm.
own apartment, get my own car. I don't need you, daddy. But I didn't realize those were all the things he taught me. Is why I didn't need him. So yeah, that's what my dad means to me, independence and
Interesting.
politeness. My dad is very polite. He taught us how growing up how polite to be. My dad is very polite.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Mhm.
Well, that's kind of some of the similarities of kind of like my dad. Um,
Mhm.
my dad is he's a military guy, been in the military, Air Force for 20 years. Was on tour in Vietnam, and basically was kind of like your typical working man's dad. Worked, worked 5 days a week, sometimes on the weekends to kind of provide, stuff for my mom and my brother and my sister. Um, he was also a family man as well. Even outside of our own immediate family, he would also care about his family, my mom's family. So it's sort of like, and even friends that we've known for a long time. Like there were people that my dad has been friends with for years, and even though I'm not related to him, I would literally call them my uncle. So that's the type of family setting that I kind of grew up with because my dad is he grew up in Mississippi, and let me retract that. He was born in Mississippi. He grew up here in Chicago, but during the summer times he would, hey Scott, he would always go back for the summertime. So he would always get that kind of uh, down south kind of like culture that they have down there, where family is more. There was more of a niche in family where it's more than just blood, because sometimes there are people that treat you like family that's not even blood. So, um, but as I reflect on fatherhood, it's interesting when I think about it over the years because when I became a father, um, I was thinking like I would basically kind of do the same things that my dad would do. However, I've kind of like expanded my role as a father because you know everybody has to have some sort of model of what a father is, and typically my father was a model of what a father is. But before you can define that, you also have to define what a man is, because I think those two things are kind of um, they're not necessarily interchangeable, but there's kind of like a level that one must have in order to to be the next level. So I always say the foundation of fatherhood is manhood, and when you get to that level of manhood, fatherhood is basically kind of an elevated version of manhood. And when you think about fatherhood, it doesn't necessarily means having biological children. It
Mm.
more means, you know, being somebody that people can go to in that sense. We've had these conversations about, like I would like to be an elder one day. And an elder is actually an esteemed role. It doesn't mean that you hit a certain age, an advanced age, and you become an elder. No, that's a role that is actually earned. It is a role that is uh, it's a sacred role, for people in the community. When you have real elders, those people are the people that you look up to. So I hope that, God allows me to live at advanced age and I can, become the role of an elder. But in the process of fatherhood is typically kind of, like I said, it's typically kind of an elevated version of manhood. But before we can understand what fatherhood is, we got to try to find out what a man is. Because when you think of manhood, and especially thinking about manhood in this day of times, it typically kind of gets distorted when you think about manhood because um, the unfortunate thing is manhood is kind of defined through kind of like domination. That in order to be a man, you have to have like this much material wealth or have so many sexual encounters with women or, physically beat up these many people, which sometimes may include women. And so when I think about, that distorted version of manhood, it just, it, I always have said it's got to be, growing up is like it has to be more to it than just that. Because despite the fact that like my father was a very nice person, like one of the nicest people in the world, um, he would not be quick. He would be quick to defend himself and his family if it had to come to physical altercations. I've seen my dad fight. My dad actually used to box in the Air Force and was actually Gold Gloves champion. But what's strange about my dad is he was more like Martin Luther King, kind of like, he was kind of like a mixture between King and Malcolm X. Like he would always tell me that violence should never be the first option. But if it had to come down to it, then use it in self defense. So um, despite the fact that, like I said, he does believe in defending his family, he's like, always use every option outside of violence. But if it has to come, if your back is against the wall, then you got to do what you got to do. But this process of manhood that he has shown me something that I didn't understand it, at that point in my life because I'm still growing up. I'm still, he's still trying to raise me into, what he thinks of as, which is manhood. But, as I grow older and I start to evaluate my life, but not just my relationship with my father, but my relationship with other other men in my life, older men, even my grandfather. But not only just that, my uncles, coaches that I had to interact with, uh, people that I've worked with who, gave me that, wisdom and advice that you need as a man growing up. People in my church, people in my organization, even people who are kind of like my peers, who seem to have a level of maturity that, surpasses their age. So when I think of manhood, I think of, I don't, I think of it in a spiritual sense. And that spiritual sense of manhood is really not about domination. However, it is about control and not about control over others, but actually control of yourself. So when I reflect on manhood, I kind of came up with this kind of definition that I'm kind of still working on. So when I think about manhood, a man is someone who can be identified biologically as a male that has self love, self discipline, takes responsibility for what he can control, stands on truth, does what needs to be done, lives out their purpose through character and integrity, and most importantly, not afraid to call on God. And that last one was something that I had added on lately with my definition of manhood. So I think about that I think about that particular definition of manhood because of the fact that it doesn't identify anything of domination or how much money or how many women you slept with, but it encompasses in a very social spiritual aspect of what we are as men, or what we are should be as men. Because when you think about some of the images of men, and especially black men, when we think about black men are often degraded, discarded. Um, we don't raise our boys to be men. And I'm not talking about we as a community, but also society in itself. Because when we think about how society views black men historically, historically we have been lynched because we have been accused of being rapists. We have accused of being vagrants. We have accused of being lazy, by several institutions throughout history. And so even to this day, we have to shake off these labels. But then when these labels transfer to us, we talk about fatherhood, because black men, in a sense, are labeled as people who cannot be fathers, and they're incapable of being fathers because of some sort of distorted genetics or some sort of distorted aspect of their internal makeup, not knowing or not understanding that the society prevents us in a lot of ways to, that keeps us from being fathers. And sometimes we as black men don't have an understanding of being what a father, is. But the first thing we have to do is also understand what manhood is before we go into that world of fatherhood. Because the thing is that manhood is not for the weak. Um, but when we look at fatherhood, we look at that relational side of fatherhood. Because when you think about a father, you think about leadership. Because the shallow aspect of what fatherhood is that you impregnate a female, and then boom, 9 months later a baby pops out of her. That makes you a father. Well, technically it doesn't, because just like I've said with being an elder, fatherhood is an earned position, and it is given to you when you have a child. However, that label of father, you know, can be removed from you if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So, just like with manhood, um, there has to be a deeper spiritual meaning to fatherhood, and there has to be a bigger meaning to it. So, as I was saying earlier, fatherhood is basically an elevated version of manhood. So, when I reflect on fatherhood, I actually come up with this definition. Fatherhood is a fatherhood is a higher level of manhood where it provides, protects, inspires those that look up to them and bring them closer to God. This is what I've come up with as a definition of fatherhood, because this necessarily doesn't identify your biological children or your stepchildren or whoever. This is anybody who comes to you and looks to you for wisdom and guidance. And that representation of fatherhood has to be on us, especially when you're talking about, black men, because what's the big complaint about, us as black people? There's not enough fathers in our community. But that also too is a false dichotomy when you think about it, because while we do have a lot of our children who are unmarried, statistics have shown that there are over 70% of black fathers are actually involved in their children's life. They may not live in the same household as their child, but statistics have shown that they are involved in their lives. So yes, we may have a lot of baby mama drama and stuff like that, but most men do want to be fathers. They do want to be involved in their children's life. And for me, and don't get me wrong, there are some men out there who shirk their responsibilities, but for me, I personally know more men than not that takes care of their children than those who don't. And for those who I know don't take care of their children, I typically don't hang out with them. So when I think about that situation, because that statistic have always, like when we always were told that black men don't want to be fathers, we were always told that, and it was head scratching to me because of the fact that I had a dad in my house and he was a black man, so it was like, what are they talking about? But growing up and seeing some of my friends who didn't have fathers in their household, I started to see a little bit of it. But even those friends that I grew up with, their fathers still came around, and their fathers still took care of them, even though they didn't live in the same household. So we do have to remove that stigma of black men don't want to be fathers. I would say in a lot of cases, black men are either led away from fatherhood or they're kept from fatherhood, because in a lot of cases, when I think of certain people that didn't have their fathers, uh, most of them that I know were locked up. We don't talk about the cases where the women basically kept their child from their father. And there's also a sense of of self of kind of like a self-esteem, whereas you know certain men feel like, well, I can't make enough money to provide for my child, so let me just walk away so I won't be a burden to them. That's not the way to go about it. Most of the time our young men or men in general have this sense that if they just walk away, everything will be better. And in a sense, it doesn't work out for the child in that way, because if you grow up without a strong male figure in your life, then most likely you would have trouble with relationships, especially with people of the opposite sex. um, I've always said that if you want to first measure somebody on how they relate to them, look at their relationship opposite of of their parents' gender. So, like, if you want to know how a woman relates to men, take a look at their relationship with their father. Same thing with a man, how they relate to a woman. Take a look at their relationship with their mother. How was it? Was it good? Was it toxic? And immediately right there, you can see, like, okay, this is what I'm going to be expecting. So um, we have to, pay attention to that when we think about those relationships. So fatherhood um, is not boxed in, you know, in children necessarily, because when we think about fatherhood, we got to think about all the children that stand in front of us, that is looking to us for help or for guidance. That's when you become a father. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a father when you impregnate a woman and a child is born. It's anybody who has children in front of them, whether it be for years or even a couple of seconds. That basically means that you offer some sort of guidance spiritually. And this is why, another thing about priests in the Catholic Church, and I understand, some of my Protestant brothers would pull out the scripture of of call no man your father, and why do we call priests, in the Catholic Church fathers? Because of the fact that they offer spiritual guidance. So, I always wish, them fathers there as well, but not just priests, but pastors in the Protestant denomination, but any other religious leaders who offer unique and and true spiritual insight to your relationship with the divine or your relationship with God. So that's why I added that extra definition of bringing people closer to God, because you can do that in a lot of roles. It doesn't have to be in the role of a pastor or a minister or something like that. Bringing somebody closer to God could be anybody's task. So um, that's basically what I want to say about qualifying, the role of fatherhood.
Okay. I think you're absolutely right. I've seen a lot of those situations you talked about. I actually walked around today and got some questions from some brothers in my neighborhood. And if it's okay, I'd
Yeah.
like to ask you a
Hmm.
couple of them.
Yeah.
And feel free not to answer because I know it's like I'm just throwing it out there. But
Uh,
these are some questions. I'm actually still getting texts. They're like, Gardis on, can you ask him this? What do you say to the overwhelmed fathers? And what I mean by overwhelmed, they may not have enough money, so they're not going to see. A lot of things are misunderstood. Maybe they don't have enough money, so they didn't see their kids this weekend.
mm.
Maybe they are feeling inadequate. Maybe they're feeling like it's too much. Maybe they got too much. What do you say to the overwhelmed fathers?
Well, there was this one brother who was involved in his child's life, and then he lost his job. Um, he lost his job. He had a nice paying job at the post office, and he lost his home. He had to move in with his girlfriend, and him and his girlfriend broke up, and he basically became homeless. So during that time, you know, less time was spent, away from his boy. Now, uh, I remember talking to his son in his older years, and he always complained like, Gardis, I don't know what happened. Like, why did he leave me, and why did he do this, and why did he do that? And so I had to explain to him, like, just understand that it's not your fault. It's not your fault that that he walked away from you. But what he remembers about the time that he did spend with his dad was they would go fishing at Marquette Park in the city. And he said he really, really enjoyed that. Now, going fishing at Marquette Park, that don't cost a lot of money. Matter of fact, he already had the fishing equipment. So he could have just spent that time with him without spending any money, um, and without engaging in any expensive travel or whatever, because he lived close to Marquette Park during that time, and that's what he said he enjoyed. He enjoyed doing that. Now, obviously, when we get older, yeah, we have to do things, and it costs money, but I know sometimes fathers, get overwhelmed. They get concerned about, how I'm gonna pay for this, how I'm gonna pay for that, how I'm gonna figure that out. But your presence alone is valuable. Even if you don't have one red dime to give that child, your presence alone is valuable. And I know sometimes, we want to give our children the best. I would love to give my children more than what I have. And in some senses I have, but if I can give them more, I would. But if I'm not capable of doing that, then the only thing I can give them is my time. And I think that's the most valuable thing that one can do for your child. So um, if you're overwhelmed with the everyday struggles of life, understand that just being there for your child is good.
Mm, mm, that's great. One more. This might be a little heavy, but this is a question I got. For those soothing their wounds from losing their fathers, can you give them any advice? This is their first Father's Day without their father.
You know,
And I'm
as a
sorry, Gardis. I'm so sorry. I had to give that to you.
no, because here's the thing: as ministers, we never tell people that we know how they feel when they lose when they lose people or loved ones. I'm still blessed to have my father, so I can't really explain what how it feels. Um, I can relate because of the fact that as you know, and many of your audience knows that I just went through my first Mother's Day without my mom. But I would just suggest this. When you think about certain things, because I think one of our tendencies of when those milestones come and we lose a loved one, we tend to kind of run away from them. But I think if you had a good deep relationship with that person that you love, whether it be a mother, father, sister, brother, or even child, um, always understand that you should never run from things that remind you of them. You should always
Mm,
embrace them and go towards it and do things that you think that they would love if they were still around.
mm, mm. That's a great answer. Okay, this might be something else that might be kind of controversial. But if you're a young man and you never had a father or a male role model, where are some places you would suggest they could find those role models?
Well, I mean, first we might want to look within family. Um,
Mm,
there might be some uncles that could take on the role. There could be some. There could be maybe older cousins who could take on the role, or even older brothers.
mhm,
Sometimes if there's a significant amount enough age difference, like say maybe 10 years or maybe 15 years, that person could technically be a father. Um, I know, like, with you know it's so funny because when I think about the role that other people have in stepping in being that father figure, um, they take on that role and basically stay in that role until there's somebody that basically comes along. So when my niece was born, um, when my niece was born, I didn't have my sister didn't have a great relationship with uh, her, you know, her baby's daddy, and he actually moved away, which left my sister to raise raise my niece by herself when she was born. Now, the fortunate thing is my sister has a good support system. She got to stay with my mom and dad, me and my wife and several other family members within our circle was able to help her out. And I felt like during her infant years all the way up to her adolescent years, I was able to kind of step in as that father figure in her life until my sister met her fiance, who is a good man, and he was able to kind of step in and do the father figure role, himself. And so now it's not just him, it's not just me, but it's also him that now my niece can look at. And my brother, who actually didn't live in the area, he actually moved back into the area. Now he can establish some sort of male presence in her life. So it kind of works out if you have a good support system, and typically look within family. And then there's external things like sports. Coaches can be very good father figure, male role models within the church, within several other institutions that you could probably put your boys in, and obviously there are a lot of programs that deal with you know helping Black boys find mentors and stuff like that. So in school, teachers can be good male role models and father figures in that sense.
I think that's wonderful. Okay, this might be a funny one for you, but it might not because you are a dad.
Hmm.
Why are there so many cards left over at Walgreens on Father's Day and Mother's Day? You can't even get through.
Well, um, I always say that um, fatherhood is a thankless position, and it's okay.
Mm,
Me, I have accepted that. Maybe some people haven't accepted that, but I have accepted my role as a person who doesn't get a lot of thanks. But my thing is, I I didn't do this for thanks or accolades. Kind of remind you of certain people who get on these YouTube streets trying to get likes and subscriptions, right?
mhm, mhm,
So you're not you're not doing it for what you say you're doing it for. You're doing it for clout. That's the proper term to use it. Clout. Because when you think about fatherhood and you think about being the leader of a family, fatherhood is a service leadership. And what I mean by that is I am the man of the house. If you ask my wife, you ask, my daughter, who's the head of the house, it will be me. And the only reason why it's me is because I serve them. Now, as a father, I don't sit down and bark orders to everybody, go do this, go do that. I'm more of a, what do you need from me? Do you need me to take you this place, or try to provide some sort of resource for this place, or even emotional and moral support. you know that's my role as a father. It's not about them giving me everything because I'm the head of the house. It's about me giving myself to them, whether it be
mhm,
monetary, whether it be my presence, whether it be support. It's about me giving myself to them, because when you think about leadership,
mhm,
you think about a role of service. Um, if you think about what Jesus said to his disciples when Peter asked Jesus who was the greatest among us. He came back with the question. He came back with the statement saying, "Whoever wishes to become the greatest among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be the first among you must be the servant to all."
mm,
And to me, this is my definition of fatherhood. So there is no glory to being a servant. There really isn't. There's no glory to being a servant. However, when you think about fatherhood and its divine nature, it typically glorifies God, if you ask me. So the monetary and the worldly accolades of being a father, I mean, yeah, we kind of minimize it because I think part of it too is sort of a it sort of goes into these, like, what they call the gender wars, where um, men rule everything and women are the oppressed. And then when you think about feminism, you always get some of these hardcore feminists who tell you men ain't ish, and men, I don't need a man to do this and do that. But it doesn't connect the disconnect of why we have these issues between the genders, because
mm,
in a real sense, leadership. is not about, gender. Because for me, I think leadership is about service. And whoever serves the most is the leader, whether it be men or women. Now, for me, if the man is serving the most, then he's the leader. Now, there'll be times where if a woman is doing most of the service, then she's the leader. But like I said, those titles aren't given to you because you're a man or a woman. It's about how much work you do, how much work you do for your family, for the village. That's who the leader should be.
Amen. And that's a great acknowledgement. I got Gardis, I got the blessing to see my dad be a dad to three girls that drove him crazy. And I got also the blessing to see my baby become a father. And he's 20 times the parent I was. I had him at 17, well, in between 16, 17. And he's amazing. Triple anything I could have wanted. He's amazing as a father. But you have been on both ends. You've been a son and you're a dad. Can you tell me one quote that maybe your dad said that you will live by?
Huh. There's a lot of things that my dad has said that I live by. And I'm trying to think of something really good to take away in this conversation because um, when I think of several things that he said, never trust men, always rely on God. Um,
That's a good one.
we talked about life, and he always said he always told me that uh, humans only live 75 years, and anything after that is bonus. So those are
Mm.
your years. But one thing that stuck out to me was very interesting because later on in life I started to realize this and how much I follow this now. And he always told me, and it's probably something that he didn't make, he didn't come out of his mind, but he was told by other people that you should never loan money that you expect back.
Ooh, that's a hard lesson. That's a hard lesson because you want to help people and you loan it and yeah.
Exactly. He said you should never loan money you expect back because you may not get it back. And I learned that lesson the hard way in some cases. So,
Mm. Okay, one more question.
mhm.
This is going to be really hard for your children because this may live on the internet. Way somebody might find this in the time machine and be like, "Who is Gardis Watson Bird? What what is one quote? I know you have many, but just one thing you would like to say to make your children one quote for your children. One quote for your children to live by. I know it's many, but just you can break it down. You could do more than one. Finance, love, future, education.
Hmm. Your biggest strength is character and integrity because nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. And always understand that you will always be in God's love, despite the mistakes that we made, despite you know, the life of sin some of us have lived in at one point. God will always love us. And God will always give us God will always give us the option to either accept that love or reject that love. So accept that love, and live in his love. This is not saying that you should be perfect, because as humans, we're not perfect. But I think if we live on the strength of, like I said, character and integrity is your biggest strengths, if that's your biggest strengths, then you should automatically live in God's love at that point.
Oh wait, sorry, my mic on. I think that's beautiful. Um, it's not easy being a father, I'm sure. I got another message. I have to ask you this one. I got three more, but I'm gonna ask this one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to the mothers that say they're the fathers on Father's Day?
Oh yeah, I understood. Like early in my life, I did kind of use that a lot, because I grew up around a lot of men who was raised from by their moms. My best friend was raised by his mom, but my best friend somehow has, I mean, it didn't degrade his manhood or anything like that, because he actually turned out to be a great person. But I remember him saying that, because he said, he always told me, he said the last time he had talked to his dad, he was 16 years old, and his dad was drunk, and he never saw him again.
Oh,
But but what he said was, because he was in sports. But what really got me, and this is why I say, fatherhood has to extend past just our biological children. It has to extend to the village that we belong to. And so he always tells me too that my dad was always somebody he looked up to as a father.
oh wow.
Yeah, and I remember that did make me proud when I said that, because my even though like, I call him my brother, but we're not blood related. But at the same time, we are related because of the fact that he looks at my father as a dad.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so sort of like, despite the fact that he didn't live in my house or anything like that, he would always, you know, talk to my dad, and then even to this day, he would actually talk my dad's ear off, and my dad could talk. so, so yeah, so when I think about his story, his mother has never said I was a father to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me at one point, because I was thinking that maybe she did say that, but it was like, she was like, no, I can't teach him how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Only a man can teach a boy how to be a man. So when you
Yeah.
think about fathers, fathers are the ones that guide the boys into manhood.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard her say that, I had a different perspective on that. And so it's like, women out here trying, like, it's basically the trauma of trying to raise a boy by themselves. And don't get me wrong, you could be the best mother in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but you can never teach that boy how to be a man. Now, he'll find out how to be a man by somebody else. It's just a matter of where either as a single mother, you guide him to, or he'll find it himself.
Gardis, I have to disagree.
Okay.
I actually put Cheerios in the toilet and taught my son how to aim. And he would beat me up if he heard me say that. But I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. We need some strong structure. And I'm with you. Choose the saying bingo. We can't teach them how to be a man, no matter how hard we try. Um, I know because I know I have you on a time limit. I have about 6 questions coming through. It's so funny because y'all get on the line. Why are y'all texting me? Tell Gardis. Uh, When you saw your dad coming up, I know I saw my mom coming up, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a mom like my mom." Um, did you want to be a dad, or it was whatever the Lord put in your path? Did you just know you want to be a dad one day?
Yes, I did. Excuse me. I definitely wanted to be a dad one day because, um, looking at my father and looking how he loved his children, he loved me. It's like that's what I want. That's what I want for my family. And then also too, like even like noticing my grandfather, his dad, and how his dad, treated his children and his grandchildren. Now, I'm not gonna boast, but I was one of my grandfather's favorite grandchildren.
Go
and,
start a
and,
war.
and I know I'm gonna start a war because I literally have about 20 cousins.
Oh,
And I'm like I think I'm the third youngest of all of the cousins. Like I got a cousin who's about to be 70.
oh, that's really cool.
I got a cousin who's about to be 70. So yeah, so it's like I got a lot of cousins, and and I always brag that, like because when my grandfather had passed away, I was the last one. I was the last of his grandchildren he spoke to.
You know, a lot of us don't meet our grandparents, and like you were saying with your dad going back and forth to Mississippi, I definitely went back and forth to Mississippi to visit my grandmother. But our grandfather was already gone. So, you
Mhm.
know, I think this conversation about fatherhood is, and I'm saying she was gone with 13 children. She had 13 children and he had died right after the last kid.
Mhm.
So, this conversation of fatherhood, and I think it can go deeper. I think we need to probably have a part two because it go into what we have to handle if we don't have male influences in our life. Sometimes I know I'm very masculine. This voice, don't let it fool you. I have a masculine energy and I hate it. I'm like, I can do it. I can do it. Leave me alone.
Well. That's the whole thing about it. I think everybody is endowed with some sort of masculine and feminine energy. However, one becomes more dominant than the other,
Yeah.
and a lot of it does have to do with the biological structures of the person because obviously um there are certain chemicals in our bodies that while we have the same while we have like we're all human, obviously our structures are different, and our structures are different because of reproductive type of things because as humans we have to reproduce, so there's certain things that God created on a man and certain things that God has created on women. But that's another topic we have to discuss.
It will. And look, and chooses in here with the biology. Everyone starts out as a girl, biologically speaking.
I mean scientifically yes,
Yeah.
because what is it, it's a women, what is it, the XY chromosome,
Yeah, I think it's the XY chromosome. Now we
yeah.
gotta have choose.
Yeah, but here's the thing too. It's the man who decides what the gender of the child is. While everybody does start out as a girl, the man decides if it's a girl or a boy. So just want to put that in there. Oh, I think Berg is taking the call. Okay, but I guess when I'll talk until she gets back. But yeah, choose. I do agree, but we make the determination. It's so funny. Mine was wrong. He said girl, boy. Oh, okay. All right. You said you was wrong. Okay, all right. Um, what's interesting is I don't have a gang of kids. I only got two children. But the doctor that delivered my children said that if I would have, like, if I had three more sets of children, I would probably produce girls. Uh,
Oh, that would be interesting.
no, that wouldn't be interesting. I would gray sooner than I expect because look, I only got one girl, and that's enough. That is enough. Oh
Well,
wow, yeah, shoes
you
you,
have 5 and only 1 girl. Oh,
yeah,
did
you
you
lucky.
wait for that girl? You ever I know someone that had 9 boys and then her last one was a girl.
And I'm gonna tell you, and I don't know this person, but I'm willing to bet you. I'm willing to bet you the hardships came when dealing with that girl because y'all special. Y'all are special. I don't know what it is, but like my son, that was easy peasy for me. But the girl, oh my God.
I do
She's
think the boys are a little easy because I have a niece and it's just too much. And then every time y'all go to the store, y'all want to get the little girl something, but the poor little boy, get on in the line. So, but the little girl, it's so many, it's just so much with little girls, you know. I have a niece and she just warms my heart for sure.
mhm, yeah. So
Totally different. She get away with anything. Me and hubby was where you got 5 kids,
hey,
5 kids choose.
sometimes I got you got sometimes y'all both got to work to take care of them kids. So that it happens that way.
And I think it's, have as many kids as you want because I know I look back on this and like, dang, I had one. I wish I would have had more, but because I was so young, I was kind of like,
I
mm,
want I want to talk about this real quick before I
yeah,
leave
please talk about anything.
because I remember having a conversation when I was in New Orleans at the Xavier University in Louisiana. I was having a conversation with a Nigerian priest. We were talking about families, and we were talking about how in Nigeria has the most rising population of any country in the world. Like they have more people in their population that is under 40 years old than those
Mm-hmm.
that are elder. So their population is rising, and birth rates in all other parts of the world, especially in Europe, are going down. Not a lot of people are having kids, but in Nigeria, they're having a lot of children. And we were
Yeah.
talking about that because one of the things that he expressed to me, and I thought it was so interesting, is that what I got out of it when in our conversation was, in America, we often feel that children are an expense, and which they are, but that's the way we treat them. Whereas in Nigeria, and well, in some parts of Nigerian culture, children are actually either an asset or they're an investment, and it doesn't necessarily mean like a money investment because the
Mm-hmm.
thing about family is like that family stability and that family honor is something that is like money to them, especially when you're talking about Eastern cultures. That was important, and this is why they like big families there because children are an investment. You know,
Oh.
they don't treat it like we do with children as like it's a liability and we got to spend all this money. So it's a pretty interesting aspect of that. So
Chu says Ethiopian culture too.
I'm
Yes,
pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it is that way as well. So okay,
man, that's a blessing because yeah, we always like, man, we got these mouths to feed.
alrighty. Well,
Artists, well, you have. I know I have to let you go. Any quote about fatherhood and the influence? Any quote you have that you can end this video with?
we're not perfect, but we're trying.
Thank you, Gardis Watts. You
All
have
right,
a great day. Thank
you
you.
too. All right.
You guys, I really enjoyed that video. I was so nervous, y'all. I'm shaking in my boots because I'm like, how can I do this video? I'm not a dad. I've been sitting here stressed out this whole hour. So I'm gonna let it go. Thank you to Choose, Scott, Potato. I think Mama Love came in here. Come get this commentary. Y'all, if y'all don't know, this is my sis from the beginning of me starting my YouTube channel. Love her forever. Please subscribe to her. Come get this commentary. Um, she has come get this commentary that she has come get this commentary too. Her name is Kiva, and she give you the latest news. And When I tell you she held me down, even during the Dalton saga. You guys, this was a great discussion. Conscious, everybody that was here, shaking in my boots. It was great. And I'm gonna tomorrow do a part two. You guys are sending me pictures of your grandfathers, your fathers, your husbands, and I think that's really cool. So maybe Gardis will be back to do a part two, and I'll get through some of the other questions. I love you guys. Until next time, you make sure you take care of yourself and each other. Bye.
Commentary blue. Commentary burgundy. Burgundy. Commentary. Commentary blue. Commentary.